Hi there, and welcome to the very first case study lecture for Strategy by Design. We'll be going through a structured reading and analysis of the case on Azza Fahmy, who's a jewelry maker in Egypt. My goal in these case study lectures is to show you how source materials can be analyzed in a way that helps you understand the strategic considerations facing businesses. This week, the source material is a case study that was written for use in a business school teaching context. Before watching this video, you should have read the Azza Fahmy case study that you can find on the course Moodle.
In terms of the global goal, from my interpretation, I think the CEO want to expand her company by introducing a better management system,
Mm-hmm.
including an accounting system and an operation system, which is an effort to restructure the company.
Yeah.
That's my whole idea.
For sure. And I think we see evidence of that because the case describes mainly a successful company, but one that has, I guess, like expansion problems, right? Like there's process problems that, if they were resolved, would allow the company to be more successful. I think one example of that is this issue of theft from poor stock and material control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think the other problem is that Azza Fahmy herself is fully responsible for all of these major management functions instead of having anyone to delegate it to. So I'm just going to put that in.
Yeah.
Tom, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I would add another goal or another. I don't know if it's to what extent subordinate or superordinate, but it would be that it seems like the main reason Azza Fahmy has a company in the first place is because she's really, inspired to sort of bring awareness of Arab culture to like a newer generation and to the Egyptian market by providing high quality jewelry. So I'd say Azza Fahmy wants to, or rather, provide. And this jewelry is primarily inspired by like ancient techniques and which are maybe not necessarily amenable to like mass production and are potentially is related to the reason why her company hasn't introduced management processes sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess agree on that, and I guess we see evidence of that in the descriptions of, I guess, unique Arab-inspired designs based on traditional and modern art, culture, calligraphy, that kind of thing. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they use, I guess, traditional methods, like you said. And I suppose there's also the idea that it's Egypt branded, right? What was that? So I think.
Yeah, there's the made in Egypt thing.
Yeah, I think unique designs, that's on page 7. Traditional production methods is on 6 and 8. Keep going. I'm just going to fill this up, but we can, parallel process.
Sure.
Cool.
Sure.
In terms of how to achieve the expansion, I think we can divide the mentioned or implied strategies into like expanding by local market and international market. I say this because the case explicitly described the company aims to become the #1 national jewelry brand.
Yeah.
And also they also had a plan of expanding in the Gulf area.
Mhm. Indeed, I agree. And I think the what's supporting that also is this idea that there's always been a tradition in the region of people coming to Egypt to buy this kind of jewelry, right? So let's see, what page is that on? I think that's on page.
Oh.
I think that's on page 4. No, it's not page 4. Where is it? Yeah, that's on page 5.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So I think the last one's on page
It's actually
9, isn't it?
Arab tourists coming to Egypt to buy jewelry. Page 5. Okay. Where is this evidence that she wants to become the #1 jewelry brand in the Gulf area?
I think it's near the back of the case.
Let me check it out.
Let's see. Good. Yeah, the only word Gulf is on page, what's this, page 7?
Yeah. Well, it's
Page
not
9, in fact.
In terms of where is the evidence of the #1 no-code is on the top of page 5,
Yeah.
the second paragraph.
Yeah. On the top of page 5.
So, well, that's not the direct evidence, but I don't know whether it is count. It said it was considered to be the first no-code brand.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder whether she has an explicit goal of wanting to become the #1 jewelry brand in the Gulf area.
Okay.
She may be, one of the things that is quite clear is that she is trying very hard to be a distinctive type of jeweler in the Egyptian tradition, right? So maybe we should rephrase it as
one of the tops.
Well, she wants to do, I guess maybe the way I would phrase it is she wants to do jewelry with the same pricing dynamics as international brands, but in Egyptian context, right? So she doesn't want to sell jewelry by weight. She wants to sell it by design and effort. She's not trying to become Bulgari, right? She's not trying to make stuff that looks like an Italian jewelry brand. She's trying to make stuff that looks Egyptian, but with a pricing model and like a demand model that is like the international brands. So I guess that's on page 5 and 7.
Yeah.
8. So
I've got a question on that though. Is that really evidence for the fact that she wants to expand, or is that not? It's almost a goal in of itself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just a question on how to frame this point, because it seems like, I mean, one way you could also frame it is like she's trying to almost create a new category or a new segment in the market for high quality Egyptian jewelry with which is priced and almost targeting similar sorts of people who might otherwise be buying European jewelry.
I mean, I think it's a good point, and maybe it's a better way to frame the goal here. Not necessarily that she's trying to expand, but what she's trying to do with her stuff is she's trying to reach a definitely Arab market, right? So let me just try and phrase it and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, so she's trying to produce jewelry for and reach both, well, a local and international market of Arab, I guess it's an Arab market. And this international is like is like Gulf regional, not truly international, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so. Better. Yeah. Okay. Cool. We happy with this?
Yeah, I think that's really clear,
Cool.
actually.
Turns out we learned something new, right? All right.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. So, okay, on to the external situation. So I think, we talk about what's happening outside of the organization in terms of what are the constraints on what the organization can do and what are the opportunities the organization has. I think one of the main constraints is that in the Gulf states, low disposable income constrains sort of what people can buy and what they want to buy, right? So let me just put that in.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally would agree. And I would also say that one thing that's highlighted throughout is there's a history of buying gold by weight in Egypt, primarily because the price of gold fluctuates quite a lot. So people are holding the gold jewelry as an asset rather than having it, as something that they're wearing, to signal to other people that they have wealth. And so the price of gold, or the volatile price of gold, is definitely a constraint.
Yes.
On the jewelry market as a whole.
Yeah. This is not.
Commodity.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it's due to. We say that the price of gold is volatile due to speculation, or what drives its volatility?
I don't know.
I guess it's like due to
I don't know if it's
stuff.
I mean, the price of gold, as you know, is it fluctuates in proportion to demand for it, and demand for it usually increases when there's uncertainty in the market, right? So right now, gold prices are very high. So it's not just people who use it for jewelry that are bidding it up. It's not like if suddenly there is a massive increase in the amount of jewelry desired, suddenly there's very high gold prices. It's like there's other things that gold is used for, and one of them is as a kind of a hedge against uncertainty. So this is page 3.
We have that, page 5, I think.
Yeah, cool. Hello, any thoughts about external constraints?
Yeah, there are some tendencies that other luxury products will be purchased especially by the young generation as the substitute of the jewelry. Okay,
yeah, chuck it in there. I think that makes sense. And I think that's evidenced by somewhere, let's see, where is it? There's some talk about people, especially wealthier middle-class people and high-end consumers, consumer behavior is changing.
That's on page 4, I think.
That's on page 4.
Remind me, what are the other luxury items that they are buying?
Things like branded shoes and handbags. But I guess, they are switching to buying things like that. But they're also buying branded jewelry, right? So
so maybe there's a constraint from the competitive perspective, but it seems like there is demand for this sort of branded jewelry or branded stuff that is growing.
I mean, it's important to point out also,
I touch on this.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I touched on this before when I mentioned the price of the volatile price of gold, but another thing that maybe is worth mentioning as its own constraint is actually just in Egypt, there seems to be a convention of buying jewelry by weight. And Azza Fahmy is kind of trying to buck this trend. I might just write that down.
Chuck that in there. And the thing which I was also going to say is I think that there is, it's clear that the labor market is tight for the kinds of skilled labor that Azza Fahmy needs, right? People who are trained in these laborious, time-consuming, traditional methods of producing jewelry. So, So let's see.
This is page 3, page 4, and exhibits. Yeah, when you look at the first exhibit of the Egyptian jewelry, it is
Yes.
it shows you that maybe there isn't too much competition on the quality side of things,
Or the design side of things.
or on the what side of things?
The design side of things.
On the design side, yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Jewelry, where's the evidence for that? Let's see. Page 3 and page 4. Yeah. Page 4. 3.
I wonder what the poverty line is set to, according to this data.
The poverty line?
Be interesting. Yeah, because it said that this number, 16.7% of people under the, or I guess of sampled, maybe it's households, under the poverty line in 2000. But I don't know if that's like a absolute or relative thing.
Hard to say.
In any case, neither of them will be buying high quality jewelry.
I think it's just an indication. So like the exact level of the poverty line obviously is going to depend from country to country. But if you've got lots of people who are under the poverty line, as Tom says, you can pretty much assume that discretionary buying, like things like fancy stuff, probably not going to be happening so much. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how are you happy with constraints?
Yep.
Okay, cool. What about opportunities?
Yeah, that's good. I think one of the biggest opportunities in Egypt in general, which is probably going to create, potentially other similar businesses to Azza Fahmy, is just there's a growing segment of the Egyptian middle class. So they split out the middle class into a couple of different segments.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's just say growing. I think they said that they split them out into people who own cars and people who don't. And this class of people who, the premium middle class, I think they called it, is growing, and so these people will have the sort of discretionary spending to buy jewelry maybe once or twice a year.
For sure. I think there's also growing trend among the middle classes to buy branded jewelry. Commodity jewelry. Cool. Let's see, where's the evidence for that? Yeah.
And then I guess another thinking about the demand side a bit more. Obviously, Egypt has a history of tourists coming to the country, and very often they want to buy a souvenir to remind them of being in Egypt. So there's kind of a large demand for jewelry.
Yeah.
Oh, can't spell jewelry. Souvenirs from tourists. Let me just find the evidence for that.
So I think one thing to really highlight here, right, and this is just going back to this idea of growing middle class, there is a constraint in the environment from low income in Egypt, but at the same time, there's also increasing inequality in income, right? So what the growing middle class represents, I guess, is an opportunity to change your strategic direction away from what Egyptian traditional jewelry was, which was stuff sold en masse, to something which something which is smaller production, but more expensive, because that's what middle class people like. So
yeah.
So I guess up here, what it should say is constraints market size for.
Yeah, let's qualify that many tourists also will want the same sort of thing that Azza Fahmy is selling, like the Houses of the Nile series.
Yeah.
Demand aligned with consumer.
And I guess there's also large demand for jewelry. And I think the other thing in here is that there is also global jewelry industry growth. Cool. Let's see. Why is high unemployment an opportunity?
That's a very good question. The situation, the current situation is very similar to this because the economy is not good. So many people get unemployed, which forced them to do something they probably were more reluctant to do.
Okay.
In this sense, we can consider the high unemployment as an opportunity to attract some young people to do like the craftsman thing.
Okay, so I guess it's an opportunity because Azza Fahmy's business model requires high quality labor, right? It's not fungible labor. And so if you've got a very slack labor market, there is an opportunity for Azza Fahmy to find better workers than she would otherwise be able to find. Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Chuck in some evidence. I'm wrong.
Okay.
So I guess the evidence for that would be, let's see.
There's an unemployment I think it says it's at 10% on the in the sort of the macroeconomic data picture.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Okay, growing. Okay, cool. And there's also, oops, sorry. I think I've just done something to, yeah, there you go. Cool. Okay. And I'll just add some more stuff in here, like.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys go on to the next section, the internal situation.
Sure. Okay, let me have a think. So I think one of the biggest constraints of Azza Fahmy's company as a whole is the fact that all of her production is very labor intensive. And so there's just a fundamental constraint on how much stuff she can make because it's labor intensive, it's a high quality, and there are a few people making it. So high quality, labor intensive production means it is difficult to scale. Or how should I say it? Let's say constrains production. Yeah, and then so separate to that is like the unique, since she has lots of unique designs, it's obviously very difficult to mass produce things that are unique.
Yeah.
So the unique designs difficult to mass produce.
Cool.
No economies of scale.
Yeah, and I guess we've got evidence of that from Azza Fahmy herself, needing quite a lot of diverse experience and knowledge of Arab culture.
Yeah.
Use these designs. Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then that leads into a sort of related point, which is that Azza Fahmy herself, just as the labor is constrained by the craftsman, Azza Fahmy is also kind of constraining the total amount of designs or whatever that they can make, because she, I think, is the quality, she checks the quality of everything, and she is the only designer. So herself constrains
yes,
total production by being the sole quality controller and designer.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, and I think, so to add some evidence to Azza Fahmy herself being a bottleneck, I think there's evidence, is it page 7, where it says that she still does a lot of the finances and the accounting, like in a notebook by hand. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, Fahmy alone recorded the entire accounting records of the company in a small notebook, which is page 9.
That sounds unpleasant to be the sole proprietor and everything. Okay, so let's see. So it's not only a sole quality controller, designer, and also manager. Well, I guess kind of.
Yeah, so let me just add the evidence.
Okay. Great. Yeah.
And I also think the brand as itself is less likely. I mean, the local buyers tend to pay less for a local brand compared to international brand. That's also a constraint.
Yeah. Where is the evidence for this?
Page A.
Yeah. Yeah. Many customers were resistant at first to pay for jewelry more than its weight cost. I'll just put that.
Yeah, that's nice. A nice quote.
Okay. Cool.
Also, as previously mentioned,
yeah,
the pricing strategies, which is creative but not easily accepted by some local buyers.
Yeah.
That's also on page 8.
Yes. I mean, there's also something on, it's also on page 5, I believe. Yeah, it says in Egypt and the Arab countries, prices of jewelry was set according to weight. So I guess there's a tradition, as we said up front, of weight-based jewelry pricing. Cool. Okay, great. Do we have more things? Let's see, let me just add another line. I suspect we've got more stuff. What else we got?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's worth calling out explicitly, but we've already alluded to this, but the lack of processes across the company as a whole. So that's obviously tied in with the fact that she is a bottleneck because she does so many things. But
How
it's
we
just like, it
phrase
seems like
this
there are
is
no,
great.
there are only very, yeah.
Maybe we can call it,
like,
we can say simply that the company appears to have outgrown sole operator processes.
sure.
Right, so I guess these are processes like not just okay. Cool. So I guess the evidence of this would be on page 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That does everything with and I think the problem is not just that she's doing all of it, it's that it leads to problems. And some of the problems
Mm-hmm.
such as production delays and material
Theft.
losses. Yeah, through theft.
Yeah.
Okay, great, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, onward. So opportunities. I can weigh in. So I think one opportunity obviously is, she had, because of her rather unusual background and how she got into the jewelry business, she actually knew a lot of the masters, right? She went into this jewelry market. She was one of the first women to become accepted in the community. So I think she has on staff master craftsmen and also has connections to those masters in the local Egyptian jewelry community. Cool. Right.
Yeah. I think that's, it's one of the biggest opportunities, isn't it? Because most of these Egyptian companies, or I don't even know if they're companies, people who are making jewelry in Egypt are not. They're making low quality, heavy jewelry and selling it by weight. And this is the main thing that allows her to not do that. What's it, page 6 is there. And then I think, the fact that if you have a certain number of master craftsmen on your staff, it means you can train more master craftsmen. So that by the apprenticeship model that is mentioned, will we say that's a separate opportunity, or I guess it's kind of the same as this one? It just allows her to retain this store of, it's a competitive capabilities, which is a competitive advantage.
Yes.
Let's say training new masters apprenticeship program. Where is that? That is page 9.
What is a BIA?
That would be via.
Right. There you go. Page 7. Sorry. Yeah, great.
So apart from her connections with others, her own, as you said, unique background matters a lot.
Sure.
So I will say her background from outside,
sure,
the jewelry industry.
Cool. And so let's see, what did she?
Totally.
She used to be Okay, so she was a designer, right? So
Yep.
fine art, was a book designer, interior designer. So that's on page 6. So her unusual background from outside jewelry, what does that let her do? It lets her, for instance, like see things that are Arab inspired but are not conventional jewelry and fuse them into her work, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cultural, let's just see, interesting Arab cultural something. Something. We'll just keep going, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's cultural. It's not really trends. Yeah,
It's not trends. It's like
she's just a student of.
I mean, what she's
She's
seeing,
a student of culture and history. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
But she's seeing something in the world around her that most people who are making jewelry the traditional way would not see at all, and most people making international branded jewelry would not care about. It's cultural things, Arab cultural properties, I guess, like
Yeah.
traditional houses along the Nile, like Arab
And also the calligraphy.
poetry. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really what we're saying is valuable here, right? It's like you've got a whole bunch of different perspectives that let you see something which, if you are a traditional jewelry maker, you don't even care about.
Yeah.
You don't care about design. And if you are a branded jewelry maker that's international, you also don't have access to this stuff. So she's unusual in that sense. I think it's cool.
Okay. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah.
Okay. So what else?
So we're just to kind of, I was just going to try and recap this because I think these 2 points seem to be related, but they're actually kind of distinct, which is there's one around she can actually just, by virtue of her studies, she can see these cultural properties as they arise, and that's a skill. And then there's a separate skill around making high quality jewelry that embodies those properties. And then, you know, maybe there's even a third skill, which is training more people to be able to make to make things of high quality.
For sure.
Put
those in there.
I wonder if we should. Yeah, I'll split that out as a third opportunity then. Training more.
I'm gonna adjust.
We want to conceptualize it. Can we say that kind of background results in a unique mindset kind of scheme?
Say more. Unique mindset.
Like, well, for instance, in strategic decision making, your mindset is something like what your background, what your experience contribute to, and diverse experience will lead to a different mindset. And when some information put in your mind, the output will be different. So that's, I think, what is valuable for the real output. It's not about the difference in the mindset. It's more about how she can use the mindset to produce something unique and different.
Put it in there. I'm not sure where you would put it in there, but I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Great.
Sorry, I'll change the tenses of these when I know that you're editing my writing as I go along.
I am a stickler for that kind of thing. All right, cool. So, yeah. I guess one thing we should say about this last thing that you are writing, Tom, is that it sounds like, although we don't know for a fact, we would have to find another source of data about it. It sounds like the only way up until now in Egypt you could learn all these old traditional methods of making jewelry was to go do an apprenticeship with, you know, a jeweler in this market where, you know, that's part of the industry, right? Whereas now what she's got is she's got an organization that has masters in-house where she can take that work in-house. And so in that sense also she's quite unique. Like Azza Fahmy jewelry as a business is unique in Egypt. So let me just write that in.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like there's some evidence of, there's some descriptions of the actual processes by which you make her jewelry, like the kind of ancient Greek, ancient Egyptian filigree model where you're like tying up all these tiny bits of silver. And it sounds like that sort of thing is basically impossible to learn unless you are watching another person who is an expert do it. And so if you have all the experts who are doing it on your staff, that is a massive competitive advantage.
Yeah. Right. Okay, shall we proceed to, I'm just going to make a little note that we don't know for a fact that this is true. It's implied by the case. You need triangulation from another source, right? Maybe if you went and you got, I don't know, an ethnography of traditional jewelry in Egypt and how it's done, you would have some more insight about where training used to be done in Egypt in the jewelry industry. All right, so let's move on to, well, we're happy with this at the moment? Looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Great. So let's now sort of talk about the goals that we have from up here and what Azza Fahmy has been doing in order to achieve those goals. So I'm just going to pop those in there. And you all can think about it while I do this.
Expand her company by introducing better management processes. Yeah, so I mean, I think the most obvious thing that she's doing about this is she's explicitly said that she wants to adopt a new management operation and accounting system because she realizes that recording everything by hand is no longer fit for purpose.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just put that in here.
Yeah.
Adopting a new operations.
Okay.
So how does this action take advantage of the firm's opportunities? Well, it's just going to release the constraint on, you know, things getting stolen and operational delays a bit. So the company can kind of focus more on producing high quality jewelry instead of, you know, checking whether the jewelry is in the right place.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the right way to think about what she's planning on doing, just keep going, Tom. It's not different from, I'm just trying to like put a frame around it, is to say that one of the problems with what Azza Fahmy is facing right now is that her business is successful and it's growing, and it's being constrained from being more successful by the fact that she lacks all these processes, right? So the strategic action that she's adopted, which is to try and develop a new operations and accounting system, is not so much one that is taking advantage of opportunities, but one that is trying to get rid of constraints. And those constraints are internal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the second thing I would say is, as we highlighted previously, it would also release a constraint on Azza Fahmy having to do all of these management things herself, and then she can focus more on actually making new designs or checking quality, which sounds like the two things she wants to focus on.
Sure. So
Yeah.
let's not forget to put in evidence in there.
Yes. Sorry. This is page 6 and 7.
Cool. So let's see, what else has she done? I think she's also, I guess, included in better management processes is this master trainer trainee system, right? And so this is partly dealing with this constraint that is imposed by the environment of like a slack labor market generally, combined with a tight labor market for skilled labor. So what I mean by this, I guess, is that she finds it very hard to find people who are skilled in doing what she needs them to do. At the same time, the labor market is really kind of loose, like people can't find work. And so this idea that you would bring someone in who needs work and maybe is quite good at doing things but doesn't know how to do the specific thing that you need, and then develop a system because you've got masters anyway to train them, that is a good way to kind of deal with the fact that you need skilled labor and can't find it, and also that there is a slack labor market, plus you have access to masters in-house, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the slack labor market, where is that? Sorry, I'm just going to go look up here. Where is it?
Page 2? Or?
Page 2 and page 4 and 11. Page 2, combined with tight labor market for skilled labor. Page 4, 11. Combined with availability of in-house masters for training. So page 9. Cool. So I guess in contrast with the first line, right, which is adopting a new operations and accounting system, where this strategic action is really designed to address an internal constraint, I would say that the master trainer trainee system that Azza Fahmy has implemented is a strategic action that takes advantage of external opportunities, external constraints, as well as internal opportunities, right? So the external opportunity is there's a slack labor market, so you can get people to do stuff. You can bring them in to teach them. The external constraint is a tight labor market specifically for skilled labor. And then the internal opportunity is the availability of in-house masters for training. So I think maybe what I'll do is I'll put a little bracket thing just to illustrate this. You don't have to do it for the rest of them, but I want to illustrate it here to make sure that it's clear what's going on.
Yeah, makes sense. Hang Long, it looks like you're about to write something about how she's trying to make high quality Arab influenced jewelry. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
Yeah. So she's quite consistent in kind of only producing the real innovation, in particular those inspired by his experience about the historical Arab techniques. So, for instance, she can use some historical techniques which are quite rare for outside people, and I guess building upon the training system, she can transfer this kind of skills and techniques to her students.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah. So I guess what this does is it uses
Yeah.
her experience with historical techniques, which is page 7, her previous diverse experiences and knowledge of Arab culture. 6, and also cool.
Yeah, I've just added in here as well that I think the master trainee system is also a strategic action that's relevant in this case because it's one of the key things that allows a company to produce the high quality Arab inspired jewelry in a traditional way.
Right.
And it also allows her to market that jewelry as Egyptian made, which is related to this goal of maybe promoting Arab culture through her work.
Absolutely. Cool. So I'm just leaping straight ahead to one thing which I think is actually a really good idea for her, which is pricing jewelry by design and effort instead of by weight. So I think it does several things that deal with the firm's external and internal constraints and opportunities, right? So one of them is that it decouples Azza Fahmy it decouples it a little bit, I guess, from volatile gold prices because part of the pricing is not just by weight, it's by how much design and effort, and that's constant. I think it also, the other good thing about pricing jewelry by design and effort, which I think we talked about before, is that we know that in Egypt, people are generally quite poor, but things are becoming more unequal. And so there's a growing population of middle class or wealthy people, and those people want designed branded jewelry. So not only does pricing jewelry by design and effort decouple Azza Fahmy from gold price volatility, it also helps her to address a growing demographic of people who are able to afford to buy the things that she's selling.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I think Hang Long and I are also jumping ahead and just because there's quite a lot of strategic decisions that she's taken to achieve this goal. So I'll just quickly say the last one, which I'm just writing now, which is, as we alluded to at the top, as the firm grows, it looks like she intends to remain the sole designer and quality controller to make sure that everything that the company produces is of a certain style and of a certain quality. Let me just find the evidence for that.
Great.
Just want to add a bit. I guess one foundation of applying this kind of strategy is she has the cultural knowledge, and to maintain that knowledge and expand that knowledge, I think she needs to continuously invest in that kind of in that area.
Yes.
So that's why I put personal investment into extensive cultural research.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
Cool.
Page 8.
And I just want to also remind that the actions should also have, in a sense, a citation, right? Like where do we find evidence that this action is being taken?
Okay.
Sorry, I'm putting that in the next column.
So I've done it. I've done it for the stuff up top. Cool.
So,
okay, great. And we are actually coming up on an hour in a few minutes. So let's just try and get this done quickly, and then we can talk about how to think about this whole worksheet synoptically at the end. So let's see. Goal number 3, produce jewelry for and to reach both a local and international Gulf regional Arab market. So I think one thing that she does, which I think is quite interesting, is that, and this goes towards pricing jewelry by design and effort, she's trying to be a little bit of traditional as well as international, right? So the traditional jewelry is mostly done by mass. The stuff for the tourist market is Arab themed, Egypt themed, but kind of clunky, not very nice. The international stuff is branded, well made. Design is a consideration. It's not priced by weight. And we also know that the growing middle class is going for that branded stuff. So I think what she's trying to do is she's trying to produce high quality, design-led, branded jewelry with Arab themes, because no one is doing that, right? So if we think about why you would want to do something strategically, it would be to do something which A, nobody else does, and B, nobody else can do, that people want. So people definitely want Arab themes. They also want branded jewelry that's design-led. And in order to do this at a high quality level, you need like master craftsmen. So she's doing something that people want that nobody else is doing, which only she can do, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
P5 and 8. Great. So I'm just going to write this in, and you all can skip on ahead.
I'll just kind of jump on to that point, which is as a result, or kind of in tandem with that, she's focusing a lot on 18 karat gold and silver as her main raw materials. And by pricing those, so first of all, those are cheaper raw materials than the more expensive, I think, was it 20 karat, or the purer 20 karat gold that is more traditional in Egyptian jewelry. And so by having these cheaper raw materials, she kind of decouples her costs from the raw material prices a bit, and also allows her to maybe price the labor in at a higher price than it would be if she were using more expensive materials.
Yep.
Yep.
And you should also note that I think, 18 karat gold and silver are favored by younger consumers as well, right? So not only does it does two things to focus on that. It decouples the prices of goods a little bit, because silver is not as volatile as gold pricing. And 18 karat gold is obviously less volatile in price than 24 karat gold, because there's less gold in 18 karat gold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I also want to add, she tries to expand in the Gulf region and start with a particular couple of countries.
Yep. Keep going.
And in terms of how this can be a strategic action, I think she takes the advantage of the shared regional culture and made use of her unique style of made in Egypt.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I missed the space there, Vaughan. I'm sorry.
I know. Attention to detail is very important. I mean, I don't use capital letters a lot, but spaces, Cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I prefer one and not the other.
Okay. So
why don't you like capital letters?
They just seem unnecessary. That's not true. They are necessary in some instances, right? Like proper names, when it's not clear that it's a proper name unless it's a capital letter. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hard to think of an example at the moment. But yes.
you will hate if you've ever read any German, you would absolutely hate it because every noun
I do like
gets
German.
capitalized. Really?
Well, I like German because of the way like you can express really complicated thoughts in single words.
Oh,
Right. Yeah. Just by it's probably like it's the most combinatorial of, I guess, all of the.
Cool.
Certainly all the languages I know about.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a nice little aside for the students.
So I think the other thing about this expansion in the Gulf region is obviously there's already a long-standing tradition of people from the Gulf region coming to Egypt to buy jewelry, right? So
yes.
it's which you're probably going to write in right now. Great, brilliant, cool.
One step ahead.
Always one step ahead.
I think we might be finished.
Are we? Do we have anything else to say?
I mean,
It looks pretty good.
yeah, I think this is pretty good.
Cool. Okay. So in just a few minutes, let's just talk quickly about looking at the whole worksheet in order to understand like how it works, right? I think one thing that we tried to do today is we tried to go kind of in order to begin by thinking about what goals a company has, followed by thinking through and extracting from this case study the constraints and opportunities posed by the external situation, and then the constraints and opportunities provided by the internal situation. And then to really try and connect all those things up with actions that Azza Fahmy is doing in order to achieve her goals that we can identify as being particularly well suited for the firm's external and internal constraints and opportunities. So Hung Long and Tom, do you have any sort of overarching thoughts about this process? Like what did we learn from doing it along the way?
What did we learn from the process?
Yeah.
Hang on, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Don't all
I mean,
rush.
I think, yeah, okay, I can start. So I think one thing that's nice about the way that we've tackled this is you kind of, when you start the case study, you have a broad, let's say, you kind of have a broad idea of what the goals are. But once we kind of think about the goals and then look at the constraints and the opportunities with the goals kind of in the back of our mind as the global context, when you come to the second page, there really are some really quite specific actions that you can identify, and you can think about those actions contextually in terms of how they make sense in Azza Fahmy's very specific set of opportunities and constraints. Whereas I think if we just analyze the environment without thinking about the goals, these strategic, so the actions that they've taken and then how those actions are taking advantage of the external and internal opportunities, I think would be a lot less clear if we hadn't kept that stuff in mind the whole time. I mean, to comment a little bit in a little bit more detail on the particular case, it seems to me the heart of Azza Fahmy's success is her unique knowledge, which has come in large part from her introduction to all of the master craftsmen, in the Egyptian jewelry tradition, and then having those craftsmen on staff has enabled her company to have both unique products and a high quality, which in previous times seems to have been rare in the Egyptian market. But it also seems like this in itself is also the source of her like internal constraints, namely that she's not set up like a company that can mass produce things, and so how to, once she's now achieved a bit of scale, how to systematize things on the back end or on the sort of operational and accounting side of things is not something that working with individual master craftsmen lends itself naturally to, and that's obviously a big challenge that she's identified. Heng Long, I don't know if you want to comment on anything else.
Yeah, just building upon Tom's point. I personally feel as the process reviews well, the finishing the first page is much slower than the second page, which is a good industry
Yeah.
of the importance of highlighting the constraints and opportunities. When you have that piece of information, the evaluation of the strategy is kind of, well, speaks for itself, because that's very obvious.
Yeah.
And then for some details, I think she solved the problems to a large extent, but like the master and training system, although Warren mentioned it has already taken advantage of the unemployment.
Did we just lose Hung Long for a sec?
Solve the incoming fruit.
Yeah.
But it still hasn't deal with the effectiveness of the training system, unless they have enough high qualified old people. By old, I mean experienced.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my comment.
Yeah.
Cool. I think overall, I agree with what Tom and Hung Long have just said. The main insights for me whenever I do one of these case study worksheets is that this part up front, the effort of going through a piece of evidence like this case or multiple pieces of evidence and structuring your thinking, like putting it all into a worksheet like this with locations for evidence, is very useful because it makes the subsequent analysis of the actions taken to achieve a goal in the context of the external and internal constraints and opportunities, as Helen put it, super quick. The only other thing I wanted to say before we wrap up is that whenever we did today, and whenever as a student you are trying to understand why an action adopted to pursue a goal makes sense, you should always be thinking, how does this action either take advantage of an opportunity inside or outside the firm, or how does it help you deal with a constraint, get rid of a constraint inside or outside the firm, right? So I just want to highlight, and I'm going to highlight and leave it highlighted, this particular one, because it says what all the things are. So something makes strategic sense when it addresses external opportunities and constraints with internal opportunities and constraints, right? So I'm just going to highlight all this so that you can see what they are. And it's about making an argument to yourself about how all these things make sense in context with each other.